What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So today is the first day of September, which means it's time to raise those expectations for a Nintendo Direct, and that was happening yesterday after it started to trend online with rumors popping up saying the Direct is imminent. We're going to go over that one here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Microsoft, Starfield, and the Xbox, as there's still speculation around this game making its way to the PlayStation 5. Well, Microsoft decided to clarify this situation once and for all, and it appears that Windows 11 is right around the corner, bringing a bunch of new features for gaming. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all of the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with Metal Gear Solid 5. Now, this is a game that came out years ago, and it had this cross-gen release, Xbox 360, PS3, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and all of that. We also had Ground Zeroes, but they did have an online element to them, and it does appear that we're going to start seeing some of these online services shut down for the game. We can head over here with a message they released. This says that online services for Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, that being for the Xbox 360 and PS3, and Ground Zeroes, that being for all platforms, 360, PS3, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4, will be terminated on May 31st, 2022, and you can see a list of exact times here, and it's not too surprising to hear that this would be shut down for the 360 and the PS3. Clearly, Konami's looking at the servers and like, okay, not a lot of people are playing Metal Gear Solid 5 or even Ground Zeroes really on the PS4 or the Xbox One, so why leave these servers up? I was actually a bit more surprised to hear that they were still up. So there you go. They're at least giving quite a bit of notice, as they won't be terminated until May, right at the end of May 2022. So just a heads up there. Also, if you're someone who got really excited around the Dead Space remake announcement, well, there was this really cool live stream that happened yesterday. You can see some of it here, but it was like an hour long, and they went over a bunch of early like pre-production stuff with development builds that they had. And I think the part that I was most surprised about here, remember this is this EA motive, is that they showed the game in such an unfinished state, kind of talking through different things they were doing with the game, ways to improve the original while still keeping the original feel. It was just, I don't know, it was odd to see developers sit down and be that transparent with the game. I mean, seriously, some of the visuals of it look broken at times, and they had very simplistic looking visuals, but people seemed really into this idea, and I wouldn't mind seeing other games and developers and studios take this approach where they just kind of sit down and say, hey, I mean, here's the game, this is what we're working with now, and ways that we're working to improve on top of the original. We're still a ways out here. This game's not coming out until like the end of 2022, so they still have plenty of time to work on it. It was just kind of cool to get a behind the scenes look, and if you're a fan of Dead Space and are really looking forward to the Dead Space remake, I recommend checking this out. Oh, and we do know that both Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League will be coming out in 2022, with Gotham Knights actually being pushed to next year and Kill the Justice League already being planned for it. It does appear we're going to have another look at these games. Specifically, though, Suicide Squad, as we mostly just had a cinematic trailer. We've seen actually a lot of Gotham Knights, but we did have this tweet here with the announcement for DC Fandome showing off both titles. These will be on October 16th, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, and Gotham Knights. And I'm mostly curious, like I said, about Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, because we've had like entire gameplay walkthroughs for Gotham Knights, so Kill the Justice League is the one I'm still curious about as to how this is going to happen, or really, I guess, the storyline they're going to follow here with Suicide Squad. But they're going to have both of these titles for next year. I feel like Gotham Knights will be coming out in like the first half of the year, and then we'll see Suicide Squad come out in the second half of the year. But it should be a pretty good lineup here. Make sure you check this one out at DC Fandome, and certainly keep an eye out on Suicide Squad so we can just kind of figure out what kind of game it's going to be. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Nintendo Direct that a lot of people are now expecting to happen here anytime, at least in the next couple of weeks. Well, what really got all of this conversation kicked off yesterday is an update to a certain blog that we've covered here and there from Zippo. Now, Zippo has had some stuff correct and some stuff incorrect, so take some of this with a grain of salt, but I will tell you, yeah, I do believe a Nintendo Direct is coming up here pretty soon. Let's actually take a look at the blog here with the update that really got people talking about it and even made Nintendo Direct trend on online. It says, update, hearing once again that this Direct is imminent. This week is sounding like the week, Wednesday through Thursday. If it somehow isn't this week, it's next week. The rumors around a Nintendo Switch Online announcement are accurate, that being for the Game Boy or Game Boy Color. That started to make the rounds the other day, and we covered it yesterday morning on Newswave, so if you missed that, go check that one out there. And I mean, that's an exciting announcement on its own to fit into a Nintendo Direct. However, the idea of it happening this week, probably not, unless Nintendo does announce it like anytime after Newswave. I mean, if they're gonna do it, it's like an hour after Newswave, so I guess we'll see here pretty soon after this video goes live. I'm thinking, if anything, it's gonna be in the next 2 weeks. I wouldn't be shocked if we do have a Nintendo Direct next week, and that was actually the poll question, so we'll see where everyone sits on that idea here later on in the show. But a Nintendo Direct isn't surprising in September because Nintendo typically does these things in September. In fact, last September, they actually did 2 events. Remember, they had the Mario 35th Anniversary Direct, where they just went over Mario stuff mostly. And then they also had a partner showcase. That was one where they closed the whole thing out with Ori, if you remember that, even like a physical copy of it, which was cool to see because Ori is an awesome game. But they mostly just had 2 different events, one for first-party Nintendo stuff, which was all Mario, and then some third-party partner showcase stuff thrown in there like a week later. Nintendo makes this all very easy to find. You can go to their website and they have like an entire Nintendo Direct archive part of their site, so you can see like there was a Direct Mini, there was the Monster Hunter Direct, and then there was even another Direct Mini like the following month. So I mean, we're getting into kind of that Nintendo Direct season, if you will, and we're probably not going to have like a dedicated Direct like we had Mario, because we've already touched on some of the Legend of Zelda stuff for the anniversary. I do think we could still see another Legend of Zelda collection thing for the anniversary. I know they mentioned that this is all we have for the Zelda anniversary, but they also probably wouldn't want to announce another game like, I don't know, Twilight Princess and Wind Waker combo at $60 when Skyward Sword HD was clearly going to be coming out first at $60. Doesn't exactly make Skyward Sword look that good if you have 2, I would say, better 3D Zelda games coming out later on as a double pack for the same price. So with that, and then maybe the Nintendo Switch Online Game Boy stuff, what else would we need a Direct for? Well, if you look into next year, really the thing that we have looking forward to with the release date is from the Pokemon Company. Nintendo's part of that, obviously, but it's not like first-party Nintendo. They could talk about things like a release date for Splatoon 3, if that is fitting into the first couple of months for next year, and then also set up some other titles that aren't announced but have been rumored heavily, like the next Xenoblade title that people are pretty much dubbing as Xenoblade Chronicles 3. That apparently was supposed to be out this holiday, but because of the situation around COVID, remote work, and I'm sure Monolith also lending a pretty serious hand to Breath of the Wild 2 as they're working to make sure that stays in 2022. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I'm sure, just got pushed a bit into next year, so you could see maybe a closeout with that one. And we've also seen several third-party titles get rated all over the place. Disco Elysium was recently rated. We talked about that Castlevania Game Boy Advance collection. Dying Light did pop up, was officially announced for the Switch, but there's no release date for it. They kind of just showed that it was happening and then like box art for it. So again, I am expecting a Nintendo Direct. I don't think it's happening this week, but I do believe it's happening in probably, I'm going to say, the first half of September. So in the next 2 weeks, we should have an event to look forward to from Nintendo, where I guess they'll talk about a bunch of titles from third parties, the Nintendo Switch Online stuff, and maybe something from the Legend of Zelda thrown in there. So some exciting stuff coming up here in the month of September. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft, the Xbox, and Starfield, because ever since Microsoft bought Bethesda, well, ZeniMax and Bethesda, there are a lot of people who still figured, oh, Starfield will go to the PlayStation 5. That's not an issue there. All these titles from Bethesda, they'll still go to other platforms. But the big thing here is Microsoft spent $7.5 billion so that they could build up Game Pass over the long term, not necessarily look towards the short term and still put these games on other platforms. They did this so that they could make Game Pass more appealing and get you to sign up, because they are shooting towards that 100 million, 200 million, who knows, maybe even a billion users someday way off in the future. That's how long-term they are planning with this large of an acquisition. But during a recent Gamescom stream, there were some comments from Pete Hines that started to then circulate on Twitter, kind of leaving the door open maybe for a PS5 Starfield release. This from Pete Hines saying it was announced as a thing that's an Xbox exclusive. I don't know if I would go so far as to say you're done ever playing stuff on PlayStation, but again, I don't know the answer to that right now. And those words were then passed around on Twitter by different accounts like the Red Dragon, for example, saying Bethesda's Pete Hines suggests the door might still be open for the possibility of games like Starfield coming to PS5 in the future. And interestingly enough, Aaron Greenberg decided to respond on Twitter to this, essentially clarifying the situation once and for all. I mean, just trying to make it as clear as possible, saying Starfield will be launching exclusively on Xbox Series X, S, and PC on November 11th, 2022. Game Pass members can play it day one as well on Xbox and PC. I know we have said this all before, and none of that has or will change. And we did have a follow-up here from Warhammer saying, Uncle Pete, were you suggesting that? Didn't seem like you and Aaron Greenberg were, but looks like needs some clarification. And then Pete Hines responded with the classic meme of grasping for straws, saying, no, that isn't what I was suggesting. Now, I've been saying for a while that I believed Microsoft made this acquisition to keep those games on Xbox and on PC through Game Pass. That's what they want you to do. They don't really necessarily want you to buy the game outright at retail. They just want to get you locked in to Game Pass by having all of these releases come out like month after month after month, to where you're just like, well, it's just something I have now. Kind of like Netflix. Like, we just have Netflix. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean you're using Netflix, but you just kind of have it. You know, it's one of those subscription services that kind of just go to the back of your mind, and occasionally you'll pop in and see what looks interesting and fun to watch. That's kind of where Microsoft is trying to get Game Pass to. So something like the next Elder Scrolls, yeah, that's probably just going to be on Game Pass and on Xbox. I don't know why they would pour in the money for development at this time to also create the game for the PlayStation. Really, their competition, right? But it was mentioned here by Pete Hines, oh, not all Bethesda games, right, are just going to be on Xbox at this time. And yeah, I mean, we see what's happening with something like Deathloop that is going to the PlayStation 5 because there were contractual obligations. Ghostwire Tokyo, same thing. I mean, look at Quake. That went to everything. It even went to the Switch. So it's cool to see those kind of releases just still go everywhere. And Microsoft technically allows it, although Quake was in development for a little while. Like, people probably looked at that and said, oh, it took like a month to put that together. That was like more than a year, I believe. So there was a lot to that Quake port, is what I'll say. So I do believe going forward here, we'll still have smaller releases like Quake go to all platforms, but the big titles, the AAA titles, the ones that will really pull headlines, get people really hyped up, yeah, it'll stay on Game Pass. And the only way it will go to the PlayStation, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons Pete Hines is kind of skating around a little bit, is because you never know. Maybe someday Game Pass will show up on the PlayStation, on the Switch. Maybe it'll eventually even be in your smart fridge. Next up, let's talk about Flight Simulator and Mario Kart 8, because I'm never getting Mario Kart 9. Well, Flight Simulator is a game that I look at and I think about flying over vast amounts of ocean, or flying over different interesting parts of land and doing some sightseeing as you're trying to make sure your plane doesn't crash into the ground. Well, it looks like one person decided it was time to insert some Mario Kart 8 tracks into the game. So take a look at this here. This is on Twitter from Elogicoma saying, so anyway, I thought Mario Kart 8 tracks would also be fun when you play them in Flight Simulator. So I put Mario Kart 8 tracks in Flight Simulator and played them. And it was true. And there's a whole video that they put up on their channel. I'll link it down below because it's really funny to look at. It appears that they decided, because I mean, you can't race with your plane on the ground, to put kind of those rings up, which gives me flashbacks to Superman 64, so good work there. But the idea of being able to do this with Flight Simulator through the modifications that they have, I mean, there's an entire marketplace where people who are really good at modifying Flight Simulator can do this, and they can actually monetize their work, which, I mean, it's pretty cool if you're like an artist or graphic designer who is also working to develop these different planes or other things put in there, and you can actually get money back for the hard work that you put in. But like, looking at this, it's so weird to see it because It almost does seem like something that makes sense in the game, just again, based on the modding tools they have and how it kind of blends into the game really well. But there you are flying through Mario Kart 8 tracks with rings. Does make you wonder how far modders can push some of the tools in something like Flight Simulator. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Windows 11, because we now have an official release date for this operating system. It's the next big upgrade for Windows users currently, and it is looking to bring quite a few improvements on the gaming side. We can head over here to Twitter, where they say, as perfect as 11.11 would be, we just couldn't wait any longer to make Windows 11 available. Get it October 5th and read all about it now. And I don't know if it's just me, but it feels like a lot of people already had Windows 11. There's so many YouTube videos I would see, and in the background, they just have just a computer, a desktop with Windows 11 on it. I know there was like beta testing and builds that got out there, and a lot of people downloaded them and loaded them up just to see. But we do have some different improvements here, a couple of highlights that they have over on their website, their blog, and I'll leave that link down below if you want to go through it for yourself. This will be a free upgrade for anyone who currently has Windows 10. And one of the biggest things that people were curious about has to do with the gaming side, where they say Windows 11 delivers the best Windows ever for gaming and unlocks the full potential of your system's hardware with technology like DirectX 12 Ultimate, Direct Storage, which Direct Storage is pretty cool because the idea there is you'd be able to drop assets into like your GPU memory, rather than have your CPU have to stress a bit to make that happen. So it's kind of bypassing it a bit there. They did mention you'll need a pretty fast NVMe drive to do that. So we are moving up to requirements of having solid state drives there. Auto HDR, which is also big because I know the one thing with PC gaming, HDR is a little iffy at times. So having that built in on an OS level will be really good for games. With Xbox Game Pass for PC or Ultimate, you get access to over 100 high quality PC games to play on Windows 11 for one low monthly price. All right, this is a big deal for Game Pass, obviously, because it's going to be built in natively for Windows 11, which will also then be shipping out in different pre-builds or in Best Buys, where you get like, the HPs and the Dells and all of this. And the idea there is Microsoft will be able to count them as a Game Pass subscriber if they can get them to kind of click through and maybe even do a free trial that's included there. That way they can continue to pump up their numbers for Game Pass. The fact that they're able to tie it into Windows 11 is a big deal on that front, but some of the things they have here will be really cool to check out now that we are getting the official launch here, and it's coming up here pretty soon. A little over a month from now, you'll be able to upgrade to Windows 11 and check them out. And before we go to the comment of the day, or tail of the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, do you think we will have a Nintendo Direct next week? 75% said no, 25% said yes. You know what? It's probably the safe bet just to always say no whenever a Nintendo prediction comes up, right? That way you can't be let down, you can only be surprised. But I do believe we are on track here to see a Nintendo Direct in the next, I would say 2 weeks or so, right? And again, that makes sense for Nintendo to work to then set up the first, I would say, couple months of 2022 beyond Pokemon Arceus, and who knows, maybe they have another surprise to throw in there for this year, something like the Game Boy and Game Boy Color games being added to Nintendo Switch Online. And we'll finish up with a comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Ray saying, I never bought into the SSD narrative with Ratchet. I just know that if it was ported over along with Returnal and Demon's Souls, those load times would take forever. Yeah, I kind of feel like Returnal would struggle a bit on the PS4 in terms of that load time after you die. And the nice thing about the PS5, it just kicks you back to like the start of another run like immediately. It's very quick, and it would be pretty frustrating if you then had to go into like a 10-15 second load screen after you die, because you're already annoyed that you die, and then you have to sit there looking at a load screen. That's the one thing that I don't miss from last gen are the load times, because now I'm looking back on it, it was pretty frustrating to have them. But I think something like Demon's Souls, you know what? If I was going to pick one of these to just port back to the PS4, it would probably be that one. I think it would be a fine game to have on the PS4 with, yes, load times, but that's a game that could probably also use that install base, because I really haven't heard Sony talk much about sales numbers for Demon's Souls like at all. They talked about Returnal, they talked about Ratchet, and nothing about Demon's Souls. So if they're gonna do one of these games, they're gonna move it back to the PS4. It should probably be that one. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. There's a Nintendo Direct coming up in the next couple of weeks. Give me your best guess on an exact date for that Nintendo Direct down in the comments. We'll see if anyone gets it right as we head through September. Also, what about Windows 11? Are you upgrading to it right right away, day one, to check out some of those new gaming features. And then Starfield being exclusive to the Xbox, and then Elder Scrolls, all this. Are you still surprised that that is a thing, or is it something you were expecting here going forward after that $7.5 billion acquisition? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.